is Rebecca Glover, and this is my final presentation. I did it on the indigenous people of Mexico, and my theme, I guess, is probably celebrating Mexican indigenous peoples, but it's kind of their struggle as well as where they've come and where they've come from. I began it at the Revolution. It's a photograph here of the Zapatistas, and the Revolution was slow to impact the indigenous communities. While the indigenous population was not included in the Constitutional Convention of 1917, the government did begin devoting more resources to improving their lot. The Constitution of 1912, while the indigenous people were not included in the writing of the Constitution, they were included in it. And the second article of the Mexican Constitution states, "The Mexican nation is unique and indivisible. The nation is pluricultural, based originally on its indigenous tribes, which are those that are descendants of the people that lived in the current territory of the country at the beginning of the colonization, and that preserve their own social, economic, cultural, and political institutions. The awareness of their indigenous identity should be fundamental criteria to determine to whom the dispositions over indigenous tribes are applied. They are integral communities of an indigenous tribe that form a social, economic, and cultural organization." And I didn't do any research on it, but I'm not sure that the American Constitution has anything remotely like that for our own. So I thought that was pretty interesting that they included a pretty big clause in their second article about that. The pay and living conditions, of course, have always been different. The difference in income between non-Indians and indigenous people were based on race. That was in our text. And also in our text was this quote by Francisco Pimentel, which is, "Must forget their customs and even their language," which I thought was sad and interesting that they were so interested in forcing them to be like white people that they were losing everything that they once were. I'm not sure where this photograph was taken. Down at the bottom, I don't even know how to pronounce that, but I thought it was an excellent representation of an indigenous person working, it looks like in like an agave field or something. This is probably one of my favorite slides. It shows all of the known or recognized indigenous groups. There are 68 that are recognized, but there are others. And it says, "This map shows the sheer number of indigenous groups in Mexico. It's unfathomable that this many people could be overlooked in a society that is only possible because their ancestors were robbed of the land resources they lived on." So there are 68 recognized languages. I guess I should have changed the wording there. There are 68 recognized indigenous languages, but there are other tribes and cultures beyond that. And some of them they only recognize if they have more than so many thousand people. The Seri tribe only has about 800 left, so they're not even included in this. The struggle for recognition has been a long struggle. While the indigenous people slowly gained access to better health and education, and even sent some of their number into politics and society, they were still incredibly undervalued and mistreated. And I think we've seen that across even in the poorest of the non-Indians in Mexico. We've seen that same undervaluement and mistreatment that was shown because the elite controlled so much and the government was so corrupt. The conflict in Chiapas in 1994, these Zapatista soldiers in Chiapas are a reflection of the struggle. It is the culminating event that years, decades, centuries of mistreatment and ignorance brought. The 1994 rebellion made it clear to the world that past policy had failed to meet the material needs of indigenous people or to guarantee them the rule of law. The rebellion led to unprecedented Indian activism and protests throughout Mexico, and that's from our text. A result. It was not a great result, but it was a result. While not all was solved in Chiapas, there are still military posing a threat to the people there, but they did accomplish something for themselves, and this was from the website that we had on one of our reflections. This is Zapatismo does not pretend to be a model for anyone, but it has been an inspiration for millions of people around the world. While the concrete implementation of autonomy, collective organizing, self-government, and mandar, Spanish word, are grounded in local cultures unique to Chiapas, the Zapatista movement offers inspiration for millions of people around the world who are building their own local alternatives to neoliberalism. And one thing that I did not put in here was that the neoliberalism and the NAFTA caused a huge issue for indigenous and poor agricultural workers because it took away some of their rights, but it also added in a competition with American growers that there was no way they could ever meet. So they had more problems than just one. And these are some of the faces of history as I was researching some of the different tribes that still exist. These were the ones that came up. The Seri one down on the right hand corner, Seri, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. She is a shaman for her tribe in the Sonoran state. There's only about 800 of them left. And then the Tarahumara, they are on the very low end. They are in the category of recognized. They have over 100,000 members of their tribe, but it's at the very, very low end of that. And then the Yucatec, they're kind of a middle of the road. They kind of have somewhere between the Maya and the Seri and the Aztec as well. But I just thought the differentiation in their clothing, in how they're perceived in society. The Tarahumara, they are selling crafts, which in our text it specifies that most of the indigenous people relied on their craft and artisans in order to survive. So I thought that was interesting that this is considered a modern photo, so they still have that craft in their culture. And then my conclusion was, while it's hard to think of indigenous people being a theme, here in the Americas it is. So my thought is always that I compare it to our own United States indigenous people. They are my heritage, so it has a special place in my heart. But the theme of lives taken and lives lost, a theme of remembrance for what once was. I feel that while there is nothing we can do to take back what was done, and without it there would not be the society we have today, we can at least pay tribute to the sacrifices made and celebrate the people left behind. And then this photograph is of the pyramids of the sun and moon, and there are indigenous people there working in the fields in front of it. I really enjoyed the symbolism of the old with, I would guess, the new, you could say, but the old in the thousands of years old pyramid, and then the new in, the 20th century new. So I thought that was a really good representation of the indigenous people. And my works cited Mexico Solidarity, Zapatismo website, and then all of my photos came from mexicoandphotos.com. That was a gold mine of photographs that are both antique and vintage as well as modern, and they were amazing in that you can search for them and find code words or search words that will bring up pictures from certain geographical regions. I put in years and they gave me photographs for different years. So that was an excellent source. And then of course our text. And that is it. Thank you.